Hi guys, welcome back to another little video of mine. This time we'll be chatting a little bit about a camera that I was very excited with when I first played with it. And I'm pretty sure most of you would have seen the video on my channel by now. And it's the Olympus OMD EM1 Markii. It's a bit of a long name, but it's an awesome camera in short. So I've had this camera now for just over 2 weeks, and I took it with me to the Kalahari on a trip where I had to do lots of filming, do quite a bit of photography with it. And just to, I said to the guys from Olympus, South Africa, I want to take the camera with and give it a proper run. Because last time we had it for about half a day, and we shot some wildlife with it, and in bright conditions. And this time I could really test it to its full. I could shoot with it low light, could shoot with it landscape type photos, wildlife, moving subjects, everything. So I could really test it to get a good feel of how the camera is and how it performs. So right, let's chat a little bit about it. The lens that I've got on here now is the 40-150 f2.8 lens. It's got doesn't remember now if it's got IS in. No, it doesn't look like it. I'll just double check that for you. But anyway, so in short, this is a 80-300 2.8 lens in that size. So it is nice and small. It is not that light, with it being a 2.8 lens. There's obviously quite a bit of glass in it. On this side I've got my Canon 60 with my 70-200 f4. So if you look at the two, it is roughly about the same size for the hood. If you take the hood off, this is quite a bit smaller than what this is. But weight wise, it's about the same. So the other lens that they gave me is the 24-70 equivalent. Let me just get it out of my pocket here for you. So that is the 12-40. So it's a 24-80 f2.8 lens. So that being said, awesome focal range to work with. Nice wide, nice close up for portraits, and in 2.8 as well. So let's chat a little bit about this camera. What I liked, what I really didn't like. Let's start with the bad stuff. Firstly, the menu system on this thing is atrocious. It is so horrible to work with. I spent about 45 minutes to an hour busy chatting to Warren from Olympus South Africa just to get it set up to where I felt I've got everything under control, that I can shoot with it. I know where the buttons is that I want to use, and I can shoot the way that I want to, similar to what I'm used to on my Canon gear. So obviously if you're thinking about switching systems, that is a big thing, because you need to be able to easily navigate your camera menu. And honestly, I've worked with some Nikons, I've worked with this, I've not played around with the Fujis or anything like that, or the Sonys, but the menu system on the Canon cameras is simply, it is so piss easy. A 5-year-old can do it. With this thing, it is really difficult. Why I'm saying that is, if you go into the menu system, nothing is descriptive the way it should be. Everything is labeled different. So let's quickly switch this on. Let's go in here. Let's quickly have a look. Okay, so let's go into the general settings menu quickly. They start with A1, A2, A3, B1 or B, C1, 2, D1, D2, and so it carries on till J. So there's many options, and it's all listed below each other, and each one of those control different, it's got its own set of little different menus controlling different things. So let's quickly go into like A2, which is the AF manual focus targeting stuff. So everything is in there for you to work with. It takes lots of time to get used to it, to find it working the way you really want it to work. So that was a very big negative for me right from the get-go. The second thing is, while you're working in your menu system, let's take off the lens cap so you can see what's going on here. So when you're working with that, you've got your menu system open. As soon as your finger goes past there, past the viewfinder, the menu, it goes back to the live. because as soon as you go there, it switches to the electronic viewfinder in here and switches this off, but then it's gone. So now, because now you've got to go and search for it all over again if you don't remember where you were or what you would like to do. Okay, so it's a mission to get where you want to go and get it set up working perfectly. With that being said, I see and that goes for if you want to go shoot through your eye. If you put it up to your eye, it switches to electronic viewfinder, and then you can just carry on shooting, and you can also see all your stuff inside. So while you've got it there and you press the menu button, it just jumps back here, but as soon as you take it back to your eye, it just disappears again. So the electronic viewfinder on this thing is amazing. I shot a lot because I'm used to shooting through my electronic viewfinder. It just worked perfectly. Where it really worked awesomely was when I was shooting video. So you could see exactly what you would see on the back of your screen, that you would see that in your viewfinder. So if you put it up and you shoot video, it's just so much easier to control it instead of holding it here. And I'll get to the IS in a minute, but you've got that where you shake. And if you're standing still and you're shooting, it's just so much easier just to keep it up to your eye, because that's a natural place for your camera to be, instead of holding it there and battling to move around. Not that it's a hassle, but I just found it shooting video, it was so much better shooting through here, through the viewfinder. Right, next thing that I would like to chat about, it was a really cool feature, is it's got a built-in teleconverter. And I use it quite a bit because I've only had the 300. Lots of the time the wildlife and stuff was further away from me than what I would have needed with the 300. So, and again, you must program this in your menu system. Is that on the side of a lens, there's a little lens function button, and you can assign anything to this. You can assign you can assign your ISO to this if you really want to. But it's got a built-in digital teleconverter, 2x teleconverter. So basically what it does, crops in on your picture. For the video, what I would recommend is, what they would also recommend is, if you shoot in 4K, which this one does brilliantly, if you shoot in 4K and you do that, you've got, and if you downscale to HD, you've got a really good HD image to work with. What I did is I needed 60 frames per second recording, a frame rate that I was shooting at, because I wanted to do a little bit of slow motion stuff. And for that, I couldn't use the 4K. I could only use the full HD 60 frames per second function. And because it crops down in your pixel, so you lose image quality. And I'll put a couple of samples of that in for you as well. With that being said, the full HD quality on this is mind-blowing. It is really good. On the video side, I'm not familiar with all the other shooting functions like D-log and C-log and all those little color profiles and everything that you can shoot with. I'm not that technically inclined with my video at this stage. And for what I did and what I'm doing with my video stuff, is what it gave me was really good. And the colors was great, the exposures was great, everything worked wonderfully. With that, in the video, I mostly shot at apertures of f10, f8, f10, f11 to get really good depth of field, because lots of my stuff wasn't RT kind of video shooting that I did. So for that, I shot in aperture priority, so that it would automatically adjust my shutter speed as to what I'm shooting at while I'm busy filming, because the video function in this doesn't allow me that full flexibility of what you would need in manual or aperture priority kind of situation. Right, then let's get to the image stabilization. The image stabilization on this thing is absolutely phenomenal. It is, I haven't seen anything like it yet. But I shot with the Canon G5X for most of the trip, and I'll put a little bit of that footage in for you as well, just to have a look at. The built-in image stabilization on the G series cameras of Canon is also incredible. It is really incredible. It's a lot lighter than this, so if you're doing running gun, point and shoot, vlog type stuff, that image stabilization is just off the charts. The problem with that is it crops into your frame. So what you will see is a slightly smaller image as to what your sensor will read out. With this, because your sensor is floating in a magnetic field and it counteracts all the different rolls and pitches and all those kind of things, you're getting the full sensor value for your image quality on your video. Same with photos, is that the whole sensor is being used. It doesn't crop in to allow for that camera shake, which is amazing. And in my previous video we did some really good comparison stuff, which I'll put in for you again so you can have a look at it, and then you can make up your mind. But this is really incredibly good. Like, we were filming from the back of a Land Cruiser in the veld while we were busy driving, and I got some steady shots. It looks like you're on a steady cam kind of thing. It's absolutely amazing. The handheld kind of stuff, we're walking, stalking animals in the bush, and I could literally just hold it up to my eye and I would film, and it'll look like I'm on a tripod. It's unreal how good the image stabilization is. I haven't had the chance to test it yet, but people say that they've been doing 1 and 2 second exposures handheld in photography terms. That's mind-blowing, because then you can shoot. You don't even need to take a tripod with to the beach to play around with it. Right, now another important thing is image quality. Image quality on this for me is really good. But with that being said, it's not my Canon 6D full frame quality. If you've got lots of light to work with, now this is from what I've seen, and I'll put image samples in for you just to have a look at, especially in terms of dynamic range and all those kind of things that you guys can play around with, and you can tear it apart and crit it to pieces as you usually do. My Canon gear still wins for me personally. If you've got lots of light, it's beautifully pin sharp, but as soon as you start losing light and you need to push your ISO and all that kind of stuff, it's not that clear. It's almost like it's almost got like a painting type of effect happening to it, and the same happens when you're shooting long distance shots. That we had that problem last time, because I had 2 times converters on my lens, and I'll put one of those 2 images in the file for you as well to have a look at. You'll see the image quality deteriorates a little bit. Well, for me in any way. So, another great thing about this camera is the manual focusing system, which is mounted on the lens. If you've got a Canon or Nikon or anything like that, Nikon has got a little button on the side of the camera, if I remember correctly. On the Canon lenses, you've got a little switch to switch it off from AF from autofocus to manual focus. With this, if you've got that your focus ring in the front, if you pull it back, that's manual focus, and you've got everything right there. Nice thing as well is that if you're in manual focus and you're looking through the viewfinder or on the back of the screen and you want to adjust your focus, it automatically magnifies the area that you're looking at, so you can get a good idea if you are going to be pin sharp or not. Also, what I found is if you're shooting in autofocus and video, if you switch it into manual focus, it will go to where you set it the last time. This little focus ring here doesn't move like the Canons. So if you're shooting with your Canon camera, switch it on, you'll see your focus ring moves the whole time. With this is, if you set it to manual focus, like let's say I'm on a 10, value 10 there, I presume it's 10 feet on there, and you go back to autofocus and you're filming and you're shooting and you're recomposing and focusing and all that kind of stuff, once you pull it back, it's still on 10. So if you knew, like what we had a scenario where we were filming animals, and then because they were standing between different brush, the autofocus would lock on the brush itself, because I was using continuous autofocus. So you lock it on it and you recompose it and it will keep that section in focus. So what happens if you move it over too much of the brush section, the autofocus will lock back onto that. So what we did is especially if there's a small little gap that we had to work with, lots of brush in the image. So I would put it in manual focus, looking through my viewfinder. It'll magnify, I'll get my animal pin sharp in my viewfinder, and then I would film. If that animal walks away, or if you're moving to a different section, you simply slide it forward and it's back into full autofocus mode again. So let's say the next come around the bend and there's another animal in the same scenario or whatever it is that you're shooting. If you simply click it back into manual focus, it will be where it was the previous time. That focus didn't move, so you don't have to turn the ring left, right, and all the way again to find that thing quickly and refocus again. If the subject is about the same distance away from you as what it was the previous time you did it, you would be nearly perfectly spot on with your focus by simply just moving it back into manual focus, getting your focus right, and filming or shooting that the animal or the subject that you're busy with. Working with. So that was really good. Right, so one of the big things that bothered me was the fact that the camera didn't have a dedicated ISO button, and for me that's quite an important part of the important thing, because ISO is very important, well, when shooting and getting your exposures right. There's not many buttons that you can assign on this camera. There's two there, one there, and you've got the one on the lens. I'm pretty sure you can assign most of the other buttons as well, but that will be just, why would you want to reassign the AF button on that side? It's got a button for AF, but it doesn't have a button for ISO, and that just controls your different AF modes. So I assigned that button at the back there to be my white balance and also my ISO button. Otherwise you've got to go into this horrible menu system again and try and find where those things are that you can work with it again. So that can easily be confusing, as you can press that one for a back button focus. You can assign that to back button focus anyway, but that's your focus button over there. And on the top is your video record button, and obviously your shutter release and your aperture and your shutter speed to change that. And this one, just check. Now if you're used to your Canon cameras where you've got your aperture at the back, shutter speed there, this one is about the same. So you can play around with that on that, and it works pretty easily. What's nice is your button at the top to choose your different scenes or your manual aperture, all that kind of stuff, and you can put it into there, and if you press the button it locks it. With that being locked, as you can't turn it again, so you can't accidentally bump it, and it'll go into shutter priority instead of being on manual or anything like that. But to be honest, I didn't have any issues of that kind of thing by bumping it and switching it between, and I worked it really hard. I had crawling on the ground, driving on the back of a truck, bumping it against my body, against other people, and it never switched position. So can't see that. It's got this little nifty little spacer that goes onto your hard shoe of where your flash goes in. So if you slot that in, it keeps all dust and grit and all sorts of stuff off the electrode. So that's quite a nice little feature. I didn't use it much because I had a mic on here. Yeah. So the waterproofing or the weatherproofing on this system is mind-blowing. I've personally seen where Warren from Olympus literally poured a bucket of water over it while he was busy shooting. It's got that, because it's got that 60 frames per second capture mode that I didn't use. I couldn't see myself needing it for the situations that I was busy shooting. You could literally see the water coming out of the bucket and falling onto the lens, which was very, very impressive. Now back to that 60 frames per second thing. If you're shooting high speed stuff in studio, if you're shooting action that's anticipated, so if let's say you're shooting sports and it's stuff where you know that something particular is going to happen, you can use it. To be honest, I didn't get it around to play too much with it. It is a great feature. Clogs up your card like that. Takes some time to render depending on how fast your card is. If you've got a very fast card, that's no problem. But if you haven't got a very fast card to work with, you're just going to clog up your system, and you've got to sit there and wait for the images to write to your card. Unless you're shooting directly to a computer via tethered mode, it's a different story. But still, it's a lot of data that this thing must process if you're shooting 60 frames per second. And it's not like you can hold your finger in and only shoot 20 frames. If you press that button to go, it fires the 60 frames. Done deal. On the shooting modes, I had to turn this thing's frame rate from 15 frames per second down to 10 frames per second. Now, personally for me, 10 frames per second is pretty decent. 15 frames per second is mind-blowingly fast, and you will literally fill up your card as quickly as you can say, how's it? So, just to give you an idea of what it sounds like, this is 10 frames per second. So, it's just autofocus, lock onto something there, and you go. Could you hear that? I'm pretty sure you couldn't. Let me just get closer to the mic. That's focus. That is how soft and quiet it is and how quick it is. It is crazily quick. Autofocus on the system worked brilliantly, especially when shooting and recomposing, because I was using mostly continuous autofocusing. If you've got a subject that's walking, running, jumping, anything like that for photos or videos, if you put that little green block on his face, you recompose, that little green block will stay there, and he will move. The green block will move with your subject as it is moving. Works nice when shooting animals and wildlife, people. Let's say you're shooting a bride coming down the aisle, sports stuff, all that kind of stuff. The only time where I had issues with it is when the subject moved in behind a bigger thing in the foreground. So let's say it was an animal and it walked behind a bush. As soon as a certain section of the sensor was filmed with that subject, the focus went to that subject again, even if you could still see your main subject behind it, which wasn't a major issue. I could expect that to happen. The same will happen if you're shooting servo mode on your Canon gear, and you would follow the subject, goes in behind the brush, it will jump to the nearest subject it will think needs to be in focus. It works amazingly well. What's nice about it is if you are focusing and recomposing, so you'll focus on the guy's face, recompose it so you've got your composition right, that will stay in focus. So you don't have to worry about that. So that's awesome feature. It's not like we've got to shift focus points and everything in here. The whole sensor is one big focus area. My old Canon, this Canon 60 Mark I has got 9. It's got 11. It's got 11 focus points, this works for me. I've never had any issues with that. Some of them don't work as well as the others, but I get by. So there we go. It's a fantastic camera. It's really good. Will I switch to mirrorless or to the Olympus system right now from my Canon gear? I highly doubt it. I'm so used to this system. It feels sturdy. It does the job. It gets great images out of this. This has got nothing to stand back against. It holds up to its own completely. I just feel more confident in using this to go work for a client than using this. And it might be because I haven't used it enough. I haven't used it in all different kind of scenarios, but I really did work this hard this last 2 weeks, and I shot a whole bunch of various different things. I shot in bright daylight, shot in very low light, and it performed flawlessly. Honestly, I cannot complain about the way this camera worked. For me, I'm pretty sure I will be able to deliver the same to clients as I would with this. Will I feel the same confidence in walking into a room to photograph anything for a client using this or this? I'll choose this hands down. It's just one of those things. Now with the new Canon 6D that came out, you guys will know from my videos, I'm a huge Canon 6D supporter. With the image stabilization that's got built in on the camera sensor, I really cannot wait to get that camera in my hands and see what that does, especially versus this camera, which has got an amazing image stabilization. From what I can figure, from what I think, it's going to work about the same as what the Canon G5X and the G7X Mark II and all those guys work. That's where it will crop in a certain section of your image while you're busy shooting to compensate for that shake that you might have. But I'll have to see first as soon as I get it. So the verdict on this camera, amazing, mind-blowingly awesome. If you are in a market for a mirrorless camera, mirrorless particular, and you have not invested a lot of money and a lot of time into a Canon or Nikon system, I would say buy this. I've not shot with the Sony, I've not shot with the Fuji, so I cannot really give my inputs on those versus this, to be honest. But in my personal choice, like I said just now, I'll stay with my SLR cameras for the time being. So yeah, so let's go look at some images that I shot, and you guys can tell me what you think. Right, see you in a minute behind the computer. Okay, right, I'm just going to be shooting some random stuff over here in Karoo National Botanical Gardens in my hometown of Worcester. I've got some beautiful late afternoon light at the moment. Sun is quite low, and there's still quite a bit of birds out, lots of flowers. So let's go see how the camera performs. Right. Okay guys, just one last thing that I quickly want to test with this Olympus OMD camera is the fact that it's got a high-res image setting. Basically what it does is, from what I understand, is that it shoots multiple images and then stacks them together inside the camera, and it's still a raw file. So from what I've heard is that you're looking at about a 50 or 60 megapixel image. So now I'm just going to test this quickly here in my front garden. Got some sprinklers going. The reason why I'm doing that is to see how well it stitches them, because one thing that I'm thinking about is if it's shooting multiple frames, if you've got moving subjects in your image, those will be, it will not capture them so that it looks like one. So for instance, if you're shooting water images, landscapes, seascapes with water rushing around a rock, for instance, you'll get breaks in the image. So let's quickly see how it goes. It's busy shooting them at the moment. Okay, so it looks like that's done. Let's see. Shows up one file, one image. You can see the file size there, 8160 by 5440 pixels. So that is big. Something I just need to see that shows 1 of 4 there, so I'm not sure what that is. So let's play around with another couple of shots. Okay, that one the focus was on the water droplets. Let's change that quickly. Switching into manual focus. Okay, right, got that. Busy shooting. Okay. it looks pretty good, to be honest. I have to see on the computer. Let's do one with an actual moving subject like myself, or yeah, let's see how that goes. Okay, right, it is as I suspected it to be. Quickly asked my wife just to press the button for me. I stood in the grass to just help my little girl because she didn't feel like staying at home by herself, and it is exactly like I thought it would be. Because when we took the photo, I just started moving around and it was focused on myself. So let me just quickly show you in the back of the camera, and I'll show you on the computer as well. If you look at that, you'll see that there is, that's what it will do. It will stitch them together as you moved. So just go to the next one. The same happened here. Look at my face. So the problem you're going to have when shooting in this mode, and let me just quickly show you the settings that was shot at 1250th of a second. So motion blur is not going to be something that you're going to have to worry about at that speed. So what's going to happen is if you're shooting moving subjects, people running, seascape, stuff with moving subject, unless you're shooting long exposures, this is what's going to happen. If you've got faster shutter speeds, you're going to get those individual images stacked on top of each other, which is not ideal. This is great for when you're shooting products, studio stuff, static things that is not going to move. If you're going to have clouds that's going to be slowly moving, I doubt you'll be able to see where the movement in the clouds. But still, I would avoid using this function with anything that moves. So, right, my suspicions has been confirmed. It's a great feature, but product photographers, studio, still life kind of stuff, yes, great for. As soon as there's any action happening, try to avoid that setting if possible. Right, so let's head on over to the computer and see what these images look like in the video, and I'll chat to you there again. Right guys, we're back in front of the computer. Now let's look at some of these images. The next couple of images I'm going to be showing you is straight out comparison shot that I did between the Olympus OMD EM1 Markii versus my Canon 6D, my general workhorse camera. So these were all shot on exactly the same settings, exactly the same light, and I tried to be as close as possible to the composition between the shots as I could be. Right, so let's quickly have a look at the first one. This is Allo, shot at ISO 200, 106mm f4. Now, bear in mind, 106mm on the Olympus was at 200mm, roughly, at 1/500th of a second. So that's the Olympus, that's the Canon. And I tried to frame it up so it's about the same, so that's why this one is at 154mm f4. Alright, so let's quickly zoom in here. Let's highlight the two of them. This is the Olympus image. You can see up there the ORF file, the Olympus RAW file. Okay, detail is very good. It's looking very, very nice. But now let's quickly go to the Canon one. Let's quickly have a look over here in these flowers. Detail, all very, very good. One thing, a bit of bokeh, you need to have your subject very close to you to get very nice, pleasing, smooth background blur. Right, so between the two of them, what I forgot to say in all these images, I set the white balance to 5500 Kelvin on all of them, so it's a direct comparison. That is the only change that I've done to these images. I'll show you in the develop module. You'll see everything there is zeroed out as it is. The only thing I changed was the Kelvin to 5500. So let's look at the next one. And this, I did some some backlighting shots. Okay, this is the raw frame. Is the warmth of the image. The Canon is a lot warmer, and personally I love that warm feeling to the images. I often shoot on cloudy white balance just to get that lovely warm punchy colors. So that one is at 150 millimeters. That's 1/640th of a second, f4, ISO 200. Again, I'm feeling that the one thing that, like I said, that I love is the Olympus gives you this painty feeling on long distance shots, and I'll show you one of those in a bit. So that's the and the Olympus is at 40, which is 80 millimeters. So let's zoom in a bit here. Olympus file. You'll clearly see that it starts to lose a little bit of detail as soon as you start shooting further. It's not a train smash. This is the Olympus file. Spot on focus on the Olympus on this one. I think my focus is just a little bit out on this. Still roughly about the same. Right. Another one, beautiful backlit image. And again, in this one you will see the warmth of the Canon camera. Right. That's the Canon. Right. That's the Olympus camera. That's the Canon camera. So again, this was shot at roughly about the same focal range. Canon 180 millimeters, f4, 1/640th of a second, ISO 200, and on the Olympus at 97. So if you times it by 2, it's roughly about 200, just a little bit more than what the Canon is. But here you can clearly see the difference in the bokeh in the background. So let's zoom into the flowers itself. Now, here you'll clearly see the bokeh is a lot smoother in the background of the Canon than what it is in the Olympus. Let's just darken that quickly so you can clearly see. Have a look in the detail over here in this halo in the background, and also at the top over here. A lot smoother on the Canon camera than what it is in the Olympus, and that's purely because of the full frame sensor that you've got in the 6D. Right, so let's quickly look at one or two other images. One of the images that I really want to show you guys is the high resolution file that I shot. Now this is the two that I photographed with my daughter, and these are the ones with the sprinklers. I'm not really going to look at the sprinkler ones because they don't really show me what I wanted to see there. So let's just get rid of them. Okay. Now this one, the one where I held my daughter, is I moved from left to right and forwards and backwards while the camera is capturing this very high resolution image. Now you can see at the resolution at the top here, it's 8160 pixels by 5444. That is a nice, really big size. So let's do a quick calculation on that. It's 8160 times 5440 equals that, divide by 1 million. That's 44 megapixels. 44.39 megapixels image. The same on this one. The catch of this is that it shoots in JPEG. It creates a JPEG file at the end. It's not a RAW or a DNG file that you can work on in post-processing. You'll be getting a straight out JPEG image. Now give and take, if you shoot in JPEG, I don't know many of my professional photography friends who do, you will then have a really big JPEG to work with. If you are a RAW shooter, if you're shooting for commercial jobs or anything like that, this is a little bit of a catch, because you won't be able to extract all that really good detail and shadows and highlights like you would with the RAW file. So Personally, if I had this camera, I would not be using this feature at all when I'm shooting for any clients, and I can't see why I would be shooting anything for myself in JPEG at 44 megapixels because I simply won't be needing it for anything that I generally do, and not in JPEG, that is. Okay, so let's do a quick ISO test here. It's my little daughter with her very best camera smile. We started out at ISO 800, and frankly this is not bad, it looks fine. Right, so let's jump to the next one, 1600. You can start to pick up some grain. It's still not bad. This is very usable, and honestly it's roughly about the same as what my Canon 6D would be. Right, so next one we've got ISO 2500. Still not bad. You've got lots of very good detail. I can definitely work with this. Stock sites and the likes of those won't necessarily take this image. Right, so let's carry on. Next one we've got ISO 3200, also still usable. I can definitely work with that, and there's quite a bit of shadow in the background over here. So now we've got ISO 5000, and the grain is visible clearly in the background. Still usable. I can work with a file like this. If you're shooting a wedding and it's a dark church or dark reception venue, you want to get a nice ambient mood, you can work with this. Next one, ISO 10,000. This is grainy. Again, it is not terrible, but you probably won't be able to do much with this. Let's quickly have a look in develop on this. So let's say we want to brighten up some shadows with this. That noise is going to just pop out. Yeah, there's lots of noise in the background. Lots and lots of noise. Right. Then again, not many people will be shooting at ISO 10,000. So let's look at the shootable ones. 3200. Right. As I said, this one is still usable. So let's see what happens if we increase that, drop the highlights a little bit, increase the shadows. Add some clarity. Yeah, you can see the noise in the background. This is 3200. I shoot at ISO 3200 very often. Yeah, there's quite a bit of noise. Let's see how we do with the noise reduction. Yeah, it takes a little bit of away, but it's still there. On the face it looks pretty good. This is definitely usable. And if you're going to be printing this up to let's say about an 8.4, you'll definitely be getting away with it. Alright, so let's do a quick comparison between two night shots that I did. One with the Canon and one with the... Those are both Olympus images. This one was shot ISO 400 at 12mm, so it's 24 and f2.8 at 96 seconds. So you can see the stars are busy streaking over there already. Let's increase the shadows a bit. Personally, I don't think this camera is made for night images. There's already some color noise happening over here in the shadows. Clearly see it over there on this side, and I literally just touched the shadows a little bit. If we increase the exposure, lots of color noise starting to happen in the shadow areas. Now there is color noise in the Canon cameras as well, but it's not this significant. Okay, right, so let's look at the next one. This is a little bit dark exposure, 30 seconds, f2.8, ISO 640, so it's a low ISO. It was quite a bright moon up that night already. Right, this is not as sharp. And one of the things that is difficult to do if you're shooting at night time is to focus with the electronic viewfinder. It's just difficult to use because you're looking at a little screen and it's showing you what the exposure is on the outside. With the Canon cameras, if you look through, you can actually see what the scene does. So on this bright moonlit night, we could actually make out the tree. So what I normally do is I would put up a little head torch in the tree and focus on that. Now it was very difficult to find that with the Olympus camera and focus on it, whereas with the Canon camera I could simply look through the viewfinder, see what I need to see, focus it, lock it down. It was not that easy with the Olympus. Alright, so another quick little one. Let's look at some dynamic range stuff. This image was shot into the sun over the Kalahari Valley. So let's quickly look here. We need to brighten up some shadows here. And we can drop the highlights a little bit, increase some clarity. Maybe up the exposure a tad. Okay, right, so let's zoom in. The detail still looks pretty good. I can work with it, but you get this hazy, noisy look on the horizon. This was shot at ISO 320, which is still a very low ISO. And this to me was not that pleasing. I didn't like this very much. So, and like I said, high contrast situation, I could bring quite a bit of detail back in the shadows, and it is usable. I think as soon as you start going towards stock image sites, they're gonna start rejecting this for noise. Yeah. Okay, the next one, this gentleman stood on the hill, and I was particularly looking here to see how much shadows I can lift out in this image by looking straight into a pretty good highlight. So, right, let's just edit this over here quickly. We're going to zoom in now. Okay, that's more balanced, but now let's zoom in. Detail is pretty good. Little bit of noise that was introduced. Again, ISO 320 at 1/320th of a second, f5.6, 40 millimeters. It's 80 millimeters about. Looks pretty good. Good detail in his clothing. A little bit of noise introduced with that, increasing with the exposure. This all still looks pretty good. Alright, so that's definitely usable. Here's another one where we've got quite a bit of contrast. There's some light shining down right up into that mountain there, and here you can start seeing that paint effect that I was talking about. This was shot into the distance, and it looks almost like the heat haze to the images. You can see it on the telephone lines over here. Telephone poles, they look a little bit squiggly. Okay, that is zoomed into 200%. Right, so let's quickly have a look. We can recover some highlights, some shadows, drop some highlights, introduce a little bit of blacks, and increase put some clarity in there, not that much. Now with this I would go and add a gradient. Maybe do a little bit of DAs on that. Right, so let's look at that changes. Definitely works. A little bit of noise. Again, ISO 500, not a very high ISO that you can use. There's detail in that mountain, and it looks good. This image is usable. You can clone up the power lines, and ultimately I would go for more of a pano crop on this. Something in the lines of that. Okay, this next image was shot into this very bright pink sunset, and obviously my subject is highly underexposed. So obviously we cannot increase too much in exposure because that's just going to blow up the highlights terribly. We can bring down the highlights, but it's not often ideal. And still we don't have the best exposure on him. So let's just zero that all out again. Let's up the shadows. And I'll drop a bit of highlights. And that looks pretty good. There is definitely a lot of noise coming in, but you've also got a lot of detail, especially look at this very fine fur on his jacket here. There's some good detail in that. And the same on his jacket. This image is usable. It's, if you want to give somebody at least so that they can remember the particular moment by, it works. You would be able, I did print this image, it was printed in an album for this gentleman, and it came out okay. Would I do this for all my shots? Would I rely on this and shoot into these shoot these very bright skylines and with the underexposed subject, and then rely on the fact that I can bring back shadows? No, I won't, especially not on the on this Olympus camera. The Canon camera will give you roughly about the same scenario, but I think you will be able to handle the noise a lot better. So please feel free to let me know what you guys think about this. Here's the Canon image of that tree. Let's quickly have a look at that. 30 seconds, f4, 17mm ISO 800, and Olympus was ISO 640, 12mm f2.8. So bear in mind there's a 2.8 there. So this is f4 underexposed. It's pretty sharp, like I said. I could quickly focus. Now let's bring out the shadows here. Let's see how far we can push it before we start to see terrible color noise. Right, there it is. I've increased it by a stop and a half in exposure and 76 points on the shadows. It looks like daylight now, so let's drop the highlights a little bit. There's a little bit of color noise, but it's honestly, this is so easy to control. Just a slight adjustment on the noise reduction sliders in Lightroom, and you are 99% there. Definitely the full frames outperform the Olympus cameras on astrophotography. I'm 100% sure it will do better even on a very dark starry night versus something will look like this with lots of light. So, right, the verdict is open to you. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this. I'll put a link into the description with a folder with some raw files in, so you can have a look at it. I'll put some of the Canon 6D files in there. I'll put the big exposure, the large high resolution exposure. I'll put that one in there for you guys as well. So yeah, please go ahead, let me know what you guys think. If you've got Olympus, if you disagree with me, please tell me why, and if you've got image samples that we can look at, I would highly appreciate it. So, long and short, I'll be sticking to my full frame cameras, and by the time of this recording I was looking at the Canon 6D. Now it is a couple of months later, and honestly I cannot wait to see what the new Sony A7 III will be doing, and hopefully I can get my hands on one of those to test it. Right, so thank you guys, thanks for watching again. Please feel free to subscribe, like and comment and share this video if you feel somebody else needs to watch this, and hopefully I hear from all of you guys soon. Thanks guys, cheers.